My parents disowned me and bequeathed all to my brother, claiming I didn't need their aid. Years later, they came pleading when he deserted them. You know that feeling when you realize your whole life you've been living a lie, or at least a carefully constructed illusion. Well, imagine finding out in the most casual, gut-wrenching way possible that your own parents had written you out of their future, literally, and given everything to your brother. And then, years later, when their golden boy abandons them, they come crawling back, utterly desperate. Honestly, it wasn't a sudden shock. At 32, I, a woman who always prided herself on independence, knew my parents never saw me the way they saw Ethan, my 30-year-old brother. But knowing it in your head is a world away from feeling it rip through your heart. I always held onto a tiny, foolish hope that one day they'd truly see me, not as a child who didn't need them because I was a rapid grower, but as their daughter. I just kept handling things alone, which I now realize made it easier for them to ignore me. That sliver of hope shattered the day they told me about their will. There was no shouting, no dramatic debate, no awful betrayal played out in a loud, ugly scene. It was worse. It was utterly nonchalant, almost indifferent. My mom called, just asking me to visit when I could, saying they had something to talk about. I showed up and everything seemed so normal. My dad was reading the paper. Mom was making coffee. It felt pleasant for a moment. Then I sat down and Dad put the paper aside. He just got to the point. Their will had been changed. Everything was going to Ethan. I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I just stared, waiting for the punchline, for them to burst out laughing and say, "Gotcha!" But Dad just nodded. Their house, their savings, the lake house, all of it for Ethan. My mom, ever the soft touch, reached out and put her hand on mine, explaining they did it because Ethan had promised to care for them. He'd sworn he'd never leave them alone, that he'd manage everything when they got older. And me? My voice was barely a whisper. I almost didn't ask. And me? My father actually smiled, like he was delivering good news. "Oh, you don't need it," he said. "You've always been independent. You'll be fine." I just sat there watching them, desperate for some sign of a joke or even a flicker of doubt, a hint that they'd considered the emotional impact of this. Nothing. Just an impenetrable confidence that they'd made the right choice. They truly believed I'd always been okay alone, so why change now? That's when something inside me just broke. It wasn't about the money or the houses. It was the crushing realization that I was never in their plans. They just expected me to keep doing what I did, without a second thought from them. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just sat there a little longer, trying to burn their faces, their unwavering certainty, into my memory. Then I stood up. Mom called my name, but I ignored her. I walked out, got into my car, and just drove away. I never asked them to reconsider, never tried to explain the pain. What was the point? Their choice was made. Now I'd make mine. I don't know how long I sat in my car outside their house after that. Maybe a few minutes, maybe 45. I'd turned off the engine, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. It felt like the weight of the world, of all those years of unspoken feelings, finally crashed down on me. It was the confirmation of something I'd always secretly feared, always tried to deny. I wasn't part of their future. I was just a guest in their lives, someone they theoretically loved, but never truly considered when it came to their long-term plans. I was the responsible, independent daughter. Ethan, he needed them more, so they kept him. It was easier for them to revolve their lives around his needs than to acknowledge mine. That was the hardest part. I had spent years pretending I didn't care, pretending I didn't need their love as much as Ethan did. But sitting there, swallowing that choking knot in my throat, I finally had to face the brutal truth. I always thought if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself, people would eventually see me, choose me. The answer was right there. I started my car and left. Please excuse my strange mood. I'll update later. After that day, I just gave up. Not dramatically, though. I avoided emotional conflicts. There was no big announcement that I was done. I just let go. First, I stopped calling. I stopped making excuses for why they never contacted me. And I stopped pretending I didn't notice how quickly I became invisible when I wasn't actively chasing them. The distance might have gone unnoticed at first. They still sent generic Christmas invites, polite pleasantries. My mother would occasionally text, but it was always brief, impersonal. Hope you're well. Staying busy. She never asked about my mood, my life, my heart. My father? He never called at all. I told myself it was fine. I had a good life. I'd built everything myself without their help. I had a rewarding job, kind colleagues. I bought my own house, made it my home. But beneath it all, a quiet, unexpected melancholy began to seep in. When I got a big promotion at work, I instinctively reached for my phone, then realized there was no one to truly call. Not them. My family wouldn't care. My career was never their focus. Only Ethan's achievements mattered. They'd brag about him, celebrate his every small win. For me, crickets. Or when I gently declined their Christmas invitation and spent my first Christmas entirely alone. They didn't even ask why. My absence from the family gathering was a minor ripple, easily forgotten. I sat on my couch that night, looking at my tiny, twinkling Christmas tree, wondering if its bright lights even noticed I wasn't there. They probably didn't. Or maybe they did. It didn't matter. I should have known it would eventually come to this. I wasn't needed then. But when they did need me, oh, they remember me then. It was almost comical. It started with small things. My mother's texts got longer. Just checking in, she'd say. You haven't been in touch recently. I remained calm, distant. A week later, another. She briefly mentioned Ethan's new job, his move to another state. No facts, no accusations, just typical mundane chat. I still didn't react. Then Dad called. I watched his name flash on my screen for a long time before sending it to voicemail. My mother tried again the next day. She left a message. We want to see you, she said, her voice strange, hesitant. Call me when you have time. I should have ignored it. I tried to ignore it. But that foolish, lingering part of me, the part that still yearned for what I knew I'd never have, hesitated. I worried something truly significant had happened. So I called. My mother answered on the first ring, breathless with relief. She asked how I was doing, said she missed me. Each remark felt carefully chosen, alien. I hadn't heard such phrases from her in years. Then she said, could you visit? Your father and I were wondering. For dinner only. I asked why. A pause, then a quieter. Things have been tough lately. It wasn't spoken explicitly. She was hoping I'd ask, hoping I'd start the conversation so she could explain. I didn't, but she persevered. Ethan had left. She told me he and his wife had relocated too far away to visit often. My parents had thought it was temporary, that Ethan would still keep his promise once they settled in. But he hadn't. He rarely called. He seemed distant, rushed. He was busy. His life now had duties. They had helped him buy his first property, paid for his education, his wedding. And after receiving everything, he had nothing left to give them. My parents had believed for years that Ethan would protect them as they aged. They'd rewritten their will for him, trusted him completely. But now, they were realizing their mistake. I listened in silence as my mother tried to make it sound like they weren't entirely unprepared for this, that they hadn't just admitted they'd never imagined I'd stick around. I let them talk. I let them ask. After Ethan left, my mother tentatively, anxiously, asked if I might come over more often and help them with a few things. I nearly laughed, but it was heartbreaking, not funny. The choice was made years ago. They kept choosing Ethan. Now they were approaching me, expecting me to act as a backup plan, like a forgotten insurance policy they'd suddenly remembered. I delayed my response. Then I asked her the same thing I had years before, the same question that had clarified my position last time. Why me? Another pause. My mother gasped, surprised. You mean what? You made it very clear that Ethan was intended to care for you, I stated, my voice steady, and that I wasn't. So why me? Why now? She searched for a response, but nothing she could say would change what had happened. I let her sit in the silence she'd created. In my calmest voice, I said, I hope you figure it out, but it won't be with my help. Then I hung up. I stopped answering their calls after that. I thought that was it. I truly expected they would see my silence as a clear answer. A door firmly closed. Yet, I utterly overestimated their ability to dismiss reality when it didn't suit them. It started small as usual. My mother texted a week later, "We should talk." I remained calm, unwavering. My father called twice in one day, then again the next. Every call went straight to voicemail. Each communication became more urgent, more desperate. My mother tried guilt. "You're being unreasonable. Families don't turn their backs on each other." My father got angry. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us." And then my personal favorite, when they realized I wasn't giving in, "We need you to come home." Home. As if I'd ever truly called that place home. I deleted the messages, moved on. But they persisted. A month later, they showed up at my door. When I opened it, my mother looked smaller than I remembered. My father stood behind her, face rigid, hands clenched into fists, ready for battle. They were not welcome. Leaning against the doorframe, I simply asked, "What do you want?" My mother sighed, as if I was being difficult. "We just want to talk," she pleaded. I told them they were talking. She paused, then confessed. They were struggling, financially and emotionally. The money and years they'd spent funding Ethan's dreams had drained them completely. They never saved because they knew he would provide. Without that safety net, they were drowning. I said nothing, just let her words hang in the air. My father spoke next, his voice gruff. He admitted they'd made mistakes, been unfair to me. But he insisted I shouldn't just leave them. "Why not?" I asked. That surprised him. He blinked, as if he hadn't anticipated the question. I reminded them that they had abandoned me years ago, focusing solely on Ethan, ignoring me. Now that their strategy had failed, they expected me to fix it. "Not interested," I said. My mother's face crumpled. She tried to evoke emotion, saying they were my parents, that families should care for one another. When I countered, had they ever treated me like Ethan? When was I ever prioritized? Knowing the undeniable truth, she couldn't react. I never budged. Not once. They persisted. In the ensuing weeks, they tried everything. Pity, guilt, manipulation. "We're your parents. We raised you. We gave you everything. You're really going to let us struggle while you live so comfortably? Ethan would have helped us if he could. But you know, he has his own family now. You're the only one we have left." None of it worked. The reality remained consistent despite their pleas. They weren't looking for a daughter. They wanted a nanny, a safety net. And I wouldn't cater to them. I blocked their numbers afterward. It was the only way to make it stop. Did it hurt? Yes, it did. Even after everything, losing them felt like mourning something that never truly existed. But I was prioritizing myself, and that was more than enough. I had blocked them months ago. Peaceful months. Months of freedom. I truly thought they'd finally given up. But when I got home from work one night, I saw them. On my doorstep. I should have known better. My mother was thinner, worried-looking. My father stood next to her, his face a mask of anger and anguish. No sigh. No anger. I felt nothing. Walking up to my door, I unlocked it and faced them. "What do you want?" My mother spoke immediately, as if terrified I might slam the door in her face. They were struggling more. Money was running out faster than expected. It was getting worse. They'd tried everything, but it wasn't enough. "Ethan declined help," she exclaimed, still unable to truly accept it. "Ethan's desertion seems recent. He said he had family to tend to." My father mumbled bitterly. He said we should have considered this sooner. I nodded. It made sense. I spoke what I'd been intending to say for a long time, in the calmest, most even tone I'd ever used with them. Trust Ethan. Silence followed. I watched their faces crumple with understanding. I wouldn't fix it. I wouldn't save them. My mother tried again, her voice shaking, stressing that he had to do his job. So, what does that mean for me? I tilted my head. She tried to respond. Because it didn't. It never has. You made your decision, I reminded them. You invested in Ethan. You trusted him with your future. Now you're coping with the effects. This isn't my fault. My father, who always gets angry first, bristled. He said I was cruel. He said I was enjoying their suffering, punishing them for their mistakes, and that no genuine daughter would act this way. I raised an eyebrow. You have a rich daughter, I assured him, and a genuine parent would not have abandoned one child for another. A real parent would not have altered their will, shut me out, and then expected me to return when things got tough. I told him, that's not how it works. You can't ignore me for years and then expect me to fix your issues. My mother inhaled nervously. She tried to look sympathetic rather than guilty. This was unexpected. I nodded again but did nothing. I whispered that I didn't want to see their faces anymore. Not an eruption. The rage wasn't spontaneous. The truth was simple. They offered me no love, no support, no relationship worth keeping. They only came because they needed something from me. Not affection, not family, just desperation. I wasn't interested. My father's face twisted, as if to say more. I wasn't finished. Go ahead and cry in front of our family, I told them. I don't care. These relatives had never been truly close to me, so if they heard about it, they would undoubtedly shake their heads and text me to ask what happened, because they knew. They always knew. Whether they openly backed me or not, they never truly professed to care for me. We all kept our distance. So, my parents' sob stories wouldn't help. They wouldn't make me clean up their mess. Someone who had always been rejected would not sympathize with them now. They were wrong to think they could emotionally blackmail me into caring. I didn't want approval. Not from them, not from anybody. I was done with their game. I saw it on their faces. That slow, awful realization that this was it. They couldn't change my mind. My mother cried. My father slouched. But I persisted. I didn't soften as they left, my mother glancing back, timidly. Ethan was almost forgotten. Almost. My life had been peaceful for months. No urgent knocks on my door. No emotional blackmail. No distant relatives calling to accuse me of leaving my poor parents. Then, one night, I saw his name on my phone. At first, I just stared. Ethan. My brother. Not the Ethan of childhood memories, but a stranger who shared my blood. I let it go to voicemail. I ignored the second call and the third. After 4 calls, curiosity finally got the best of me and I picked up. It started softly. Then a timid voice said, "Hello?" I waited, arms folded, leaning against my kitchen counter. I would not ease his burden. A weak laugh escaped him. They said it's been a long time. I remained silent. He asked again how I was, how my life was going. Fine. Perhaps expecting me to elaborate, he paused. I did not. Finally, he sighed. I wouldn't say we were close, but we are family. Family. It sounded funny coming from him. I listened while he deftly avoided the real reason he called. Our parents were mentioned. He'd heard they were struggling, felt terrible about the outcome. His half-hearted shame didn't interest me. So I cut through the bullshit. What do you want? Silence returned. Then he confessed. Our parents had asked his in-laws for help. They had evidently attempted every possible route, knocking on doors they had never bothered to visit before. Ethan's wife was unhappy. Her family wasn't thrilled either. His in-laws made it clear they weren't a charity and that Ethan was an adult with responsibilities. He called me, and I could tell by his tone, his cautious phrasing, his attempt to appear as if he was looking out for them rather than trying to dump them on me. They're still our parents, he said. though they raised us. Who was raised? From where I stood, they hadn't raised me. I said, "Isn't that good news?" He stumbled. "I mean, it's not good that they're struggling. We should help them." "Help them?" I repeated, my voice flat. Where was the empathy when they cut me out of their will years ago? Where was the family when they focused on him and ignored me? I reminded him we were never close, that I wasn't wounded by what he did, because we were acquaintances who lived in the same house for a few years, not brothers. I persevered, cutting through his arguments. I told him this wasn't some family tragedy or a sad arrangement I was going to worry about. They lived with their decisions because they made them. Ethan remained silent. I knew he wanted to argue that things weren't so easy, but he knew it was. He breathed deeply and said he understood, that he didn't expect much from me. "You're receiving nothing from me," I said. "So great." He grumbled about how cold I was, how I used to be different. I nearly laughed again. I assured him I hadn't changed. I'd just quit pretending. I disconnected without blocking him. It wasn't necessary. He wouldn't call again. My first step after hanging up with Ethan was to sit in silence and let the weight of the talk drift away. I left because, unlike them, I had a future that wasn't here. Weeks ago, I'd been given a business opportunity in another state. My life could change with this big move. My initial reluctance was due to the drastic shift of selling my property and moving to a new area. But the more I thought about it, the more natural it seemed. Too many negative memories were here. I'd acquired this house years ago as a shelter, a space of my own. But now it felt like a weight, a constant reminder of people who never truly belonged in my life. I decided to leave. My real estate representative showed me the property the next day, praising its condition and high market worth. I scarcely noticed. I had already moved on. It was just a house. I was already planning a new city, a new career, a new life. When we discussed the listing price, I simply wanted it done no matter what. Within days, the paperwork was finished. Then packing began. I only took what I truly needed, selling, donating, or giving away the rest. I wanted a clean slate, and each item I put in a box felt like shedding another layer of the past. I left behind the furniture I'd bought to host family because I no longer needed it. I had spent years holding on to things, thinking they might make up for the lack of affection I had gotten. But suddenly I knew they could be replaced. I packed my framed photographs of solo trips and threw away anything related to my parents. Telling a few key individuals was all that was left. I informed my close friends first, and they were delighted and supportive because they knew I needed this. I considered notifying my extended family, not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted them to know I was done. I sent a brief statement alerting them that I was moving out of state, selling my house, and would no longer be around. The reactions were predictable. "Where are you leaving, and why so quickly?" Some polite well wishes, some not so well, and a few guilt-tripping letters, primarily from elder relatives, about family, unity, and my rashness. I disregarded them. Why should I care what they thought now? They never fought for me. I didn't know them better. Then my parents learned. Ethan or another family member may have told them, but another knock on my door made it irrelevant. When the moving truck arrived, I felt light, not scared or sad. I didn't open the window, but watched as they lingered, knocked, waited, and hoped before finally leaving, just like I would for good. My freedom was worth more than whatever they could have given me in a will. I wasn't carrying others' expectations or hoping for acceptance that would never come. Ethan contacted me again just after I'd moved in. I briefly pondered ignoring it. He told me his wife was pregnant, and our parents, they'd showed up at his door with their bags. They were selling their house. They had no savings. They expected Ethan to take them in, because he was their golden child, the one they had given everything to, rewritten their will for. But Ethan, the son who had vowed to protect them, was no longer obedient. Their expectations seemed harder to handle now, with a wife, a baby on the way, and his own responsibilities. He didn't explicitly beg for aid, but his message was frustrated, cloaked in pity. He stated they were pressuring him. He was overwhelmed, unsure what to do. It wasn't my problem. I nearly laughed. It never was. I simply said, "You wanted to be their only kid. You are." Then I blocked his number, and I was finally truly free.